All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So in today's presentation, we are talking all about improving rock scrambling for hikers. And we're going to be going into some training ideas to help with this specific type of section for the trail. Now, basically, rock scrambling for hikers, it is a bit of a barrier for a lot of hikers, and it is a common issue that I hear from so many hikers around the world, and people who really do struggle with this type of hiking, this section of the trail. Now, for some people and a lot of hikers out there, they don't really think anything of this. It's not a big deal for them. They kind of think this is the fun section of hiking. Maybe they've grown up doing this. They don't have any issues. And a lot of people don't really think anything of this. And if you are in that same situation, you're all already thinking, oh, rock scrambling, that's good, that's fun. You probably don't need to watch this video. It's not really for you. However, there are a lot of other people out there who this section, it absolutely sucks. They really struggle with this type of hiking. It really adds a lot of physical and mental load, and it does suck a lot of the fun out of a day on the trail. And a lot of people experience things like jelly legs when they're going up these ascents, or they're going from rock to rock and they're getting all wobbly and they're getting shaky and not feeling good. They get out of control breathing and they're on these sections and they just can't catch their breath and they just start stressing out from that. We get a lot of people who get anxiety where they just think they're going to fall or they're going to slip or they just cannot get through this mental barrier from getting rock to rock. A lot of people just struggle with instability where they're just step by step, they just kind of feel like, they're just not stable, they're not in control of themselves, or whatever it may be. And a lot of people just generally feel weak, whether it's lower body, upper body, they just don't feel very strong in this particular situation. All of this is really common for a lot of people, and all of this can sort of lead to this being an absolute nightmare for a lot of people. And a lot of people will not only hate this when it comes up about it, but they will also just avoid any type of hiking with this in. And if they know that a hike is going to have some rock scrambling in it, they'll be like, nah, that's not for me. And it does end up with a lot of hikers kind of limiting themselves on the adventures because they're just aware this section is not much fun. So essentially, we're going to be going in today just some ideas around to help with this. Now, before I go any further, let's just talk about what rock scrambling is, because it does come in many different shapes and forms. Everyone's got their different definitions and situations. Everyone's got their different sort of vision in their head about what rock scrambling is. I just want to define what I'm specifically talking about today. Now, basically, I'm going to be lumping in sort of two big sort of categories of rock scrambling into kind of one. Now, there's what I call vertical scrambling, where basically you're kind of going up a hill, a mountain face, a cliff face, where you kind of got to get the arms involved. There's steep steps, there's rocky terrain, you've got to use handholds to either pull yourself up a little bit or at least to balance yourself, and you're kind of going up and up and up of this steep rock terrain, basically. And it's kind of halfway between hiking on the flat and actually climbing. Because it's not so much you have to literally pull yourself up with your upper body, but there is a demand in regards to your upper body, and it's kind of halfway in between the two. And you basically are using arms and legs to ascend. Now, this could be high rocks, steps, boulders, or whatever it may be, a whole bunch of different situations. Now, the other side of things is horizontal scrambling. So it's not so much you're going up, but more going along horizontal terrain, which is a bit rougher. So you're kind of jumping from like boulder fields or dry riverbeds, or you're going from rock to rock to rock to rock. And it's not so much, going up, it's more steady, but you're kind of still going scrambling over the rocks, basically. Now, I'm sure there are probably more technical names than this. I'm sure there's other situations and people actually have proper names for this, but this is kind of what I think in my head. So just so you have some context around what I'm talking about. Other people may have different definitions of rock scrambling, different things that they're kind of thinking about, but this is sort of what I'm talking about today. And if you do have a different situation that doesn't kind of fall into this, some of these ideas may help anyway, because it's going to be pretty beneficial regardless. So with that being said, let's get into it. Now, before I get into the specific bits and pieces that can help with this type of thing, and I'm going to be sharing some specific exercises, some specific workouts to help with rock scrambling, I want to just be clear. The biggest improvements you are going to get from rock scrambling, whether it's vertical or horizontal, will come from the basics of your training. And essentially what I mean by that is when it comes down to hiking training, things I recommend for people: strength training, so important; cardio training, so important; getting out on the trail, so important; and a bunch of other things. And really the basics of training, getting them right, is where you're going to get the majority of your improvements. So on the strength side of things, stronger muscles essentially going to help you have easier movements, whether it's vertical or horizontal, and you're going to have more stability. If all you do is just a general basic strength training program and you've never done that before, that will make a dramatic difference to your rock scrambling. And you want to be making sure you're including this. Lower body, upper body, core, making sure you're covering all your bases. That will make a dramatic difference. Number 2, conditioning or cardio. Essentially, when it comes down to this type of thing, if you are entering these rock scrambling situations where you're already tired, or if you get halfway through a rock scrambling situation and you are tired, you're going to have a terrible time. You're going to feel unsteady. You're going to have mental anxiety. You're going to, just not feel good. All your muscles are going to fatigue, and you're going to really, really struggle with stability or whatever it may be. So essentially, if we can work on our conditioning through our general training and have less fatigue in this situation, you're going to have more confidence, more concentration, more energy. All of those things are going to make a dramatic difference. So again, conditioning, basic conditioning, just improving your fitness through your training will make a big, big, big difference here. And then on top of that, it's just general balance, like basically better balance without even getting into specific stuff for this rock scrambling, which we'll go into in a moment. Just doing any old balance training will probably help you feel a bit steadier on your feet. So typically, I don't generally do a huge amount of separate balance training with my hikers, but we incorporate it into our strength training. So some of our exercises when we're doing strength exercises will have a balance component, things like single-legged deadlifts or step downs, really, really great exercises for hikers that go into most of my programs in one way or another. They will help with balance. And then you can throw in other exercises like standing on one foot or having your eyes closed and stand on one foot and bits and pieces like that. Honestly, they're like the basics in regards to training for hiking, strength, conditioning, bit of balance as well. Everyone should be doing this regardless if you struggle with rock scrambling. And if you're not doing this already, this is where you want to start, because this will get where you'll get 95% of the results. And ultimately, if you are not consistently training and developing these things with a progressive, meaning gets harder and harder and harder over months, and structured, meaning it's not just a random selection of exercises, but it actually has a plan, this is the best place to start. And I cannot stress that enough. If you're not doing these things consistently and you're not progressing it and not following a structure, do that. Don't even worry about the rest of the presentation. That's where you want to start, and that will make all the difference for you. But beyond that, the rest of the presentation is going to be doing things you can do to complement this. So I'm just going to assume now, with the rest of everything I'm about to say, that you are doing things, you're consistent with this, you're following this, and the bits and pieces I'm about to cover are going to complement these things. Without them, you're only going to get so many results. Now, before I go any further, strength training, as I said, really, really, really important, super beneficial for hiking. If you are not sure about this, if you've never done this before, you're not sure how to apply this in your hiking, maybe done it in the gym, but you weren't a big fan or whatever it may be. If you're not sure about strength training for hiking and you're interested in exploring it, I do have something for you. Basically, I have a free little mini course around getting started with strength training for hiking. Really, really cool little course which can get you started. Inside, I'll teach you the specific benefits of strength training for hiking. So not only is it good for rock scrambling, but for a bunch of other things. It'll teach you that. It'll understand the principles of effective strength training. So how to get the most out of this type of training, the best help you on the trail. And also will teach you how to create your own strength workouts, which you can do at home, which can help your hiking. And you'll basically get some ideas, some templates, some examples, which you can put together your own workouts. If you did want to get involved with that, it's a completely free course. You're more than welcome to get access. All you have to do is go to summitstrength.com.au/strength-mini-course. Go to that website, plug in your details, you'll get access to that course for free, and that can be a really, really good place to start with your strength training if you're not doing it before, not doing it already, or whatever it may be. So with that being said, let's get into what we're going to be covering. So number one, we're going to be having two sort of things here. Number one, we're going to be covering what's called off-trail training. So basically exercises you can do at home or in the gym, which can help with rock scrambling. Now, basically these exercises, they're probably best just slotted into your normal workouts. Whatever else you're doing in your training already, you don't have to spend a dramatic amount of time with these exercises. You can just slot them into your week. So you might throw them in your warm-ups. So if you're warming up before a strength session, or if you're warming up before a cardio session, you can do 5 minutes of these things, can be all you need. Or you can use them as filler exercises. So in your rest periods in strength exercises. So often when we're doing strength training, we'll do an exercise, we'll rest. We'll do an exercise, we'll rest. We'll do an exercise, we'll rest. That's all well and good. And you can kind of use these exercises in those rest periods. Can work pretty well, or really anywhere you want it. Now, the other side of things we're going to be covering is on-trail training. So things you're basically going to do outside or actually on the trail, which can help a little bit here. And these can be incorporated into actual hiking if you want, or you can just do it as standalone sessions. So they're kind of the two divisions we're going to be covering. So let's start with on-trail exercises. And I'm going to go through 4 different exercises which can be quite beneficial for hikers who struggle with rock scrambling, and they're just exercises can help. Now, this first one is what's called a crossover step up. It's really simple. Basically, you're going to find a little step, a little box, something like this. And you're basically going to follow this, where you step with one foot and you step over and across. Really simple, but very effective. Essentially, what this does is it develops confidence and control when you're shifting your weight laterally. This is really relevant for the horizontal scrambling, because quite often we'll end up not just going straight forward, straight back, but we'll have to go from rock to rock to rock. And it can be a little bit tricky. And a lot of people in our everyday life will just not be used to this, will be not exposed to it, because we're constantly going forward and back, forward and back. So when we get to that stage on the trail, it just can be really tough. So this can be a great exercise to help with this as you're shifting your weight from side to side. Now, basically with this particular exercise, you can kind of start just like this is. So basically with a small box, you can either use your body weight or just use a plate like that to counterbalance yourself. Holding the plate actually makes things easier because you're kind of counterbalancing on this as well. Now, the way to make this a little bit more difficult, this is your intro level, but you can make this significantly more difficult. Next thing, you can use a higher step. So this is a pretty low step. You can make this relatively high. So you're stepping up and over. That does challenge things. The next thing you can kind of look at is wearing a pack on your back. So this is a little bit closer to what you're doing in hiking. So basically having the weight on your back, it will basically throw you out. You'll have to stabilize your torso a little bit. That can be relatively challenging. And that, just going from body weight to wearing a pack, can be a pretty good challenge. Then the next thing, if you've done that for a couple of weeks, you're like, this is actually feeling pretty good. The next level, what you can look at doing is you can wear your pack, but essentially instead of loading up with weights or rice or dog food or whatever it may be, what you can do is load it up with some instability. And essentially what this involves is getting a dry bag. So a dry bag, you know, those bags that are designed to keep your clothes dry or whatever it may be. Most hikers will have these floating around, or if you don't have them, you can buy them for like 10 bucks, 15 bucks at most hiking stores. What you can do is you can get that dry bag, you can fill it with 3/4 of water and then close it up, put it in your pack. Now, essentially what this is going to do is if it's 3/4 full of water or even half full of water, as you're stepping up and over, that water is going to slosh around a little bit. And what that's going to do is just add an extra component where you're just a little bit out of whack, a little bit unstable. So essentially it's going to challenge your torso, your core, your legs, just to stay stable and this and that. It's a really simple thing, but it can actually be a really great way just to add a little bit extra balance. So essentially, this is a nice place to start for a lot of people who struggle with this horizontal scrambling, of just doing these crossover step-ups and slowly working through those progressions. So that's number one. Now, next one we can kind of look at is what's called a star balance exercise. So this is a pretty challenging balance exercise, which you can do, which kind of just develops balance and stability through some slightly more weird and awkward positions. Because a lot of balance training we often do, particularly in intro balance, is we're doing what we call static balance, where we're just standing in one spot and we're kind of trying to keep everything in line, which is a great place to start. This star balance is exposing the body just to being in slightly different positions. So you can do this like it's demoed on the video where you lay out tape on the floor. I like to just get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 8 different sort of objects like tissue boxes, flip-flops, shoes, whatever, and just put them out around me. And essentially what you're trying to do is just keep one foot steady on the floor and you're slowly but surely stepping out to each of those points. And as I sort of said before, the key to this is basically you're just exposing the body to these different positions where the legs, the hips, the torso, everything has to kind of balance when you're a little bit out of whack. It seems simple, but it can be very challenging, can be really beneficial. No, for this one, basically you just start with body weight, just start with like light taps out. Then basically to make it a little bit harder, you can go a little bit further. So as opposed to just these little taps out, you can kind of actually stretch out your limbs and go with that. Then again, you can look at that pack progression where you wear a pack on your back and you do the same thing. Then you can try that pack with a dry bag 3/4 full of water. Again, when you're sloshing around, makes it really challenging. And then also you can challenge yourself by putting things under your feet. You can put a pillow under your feet. You can put an exercise mat. Some people who have crazy balance can probably do this on a stability disc or a Bosu ball. You know, if you can do that, you probably don't need to be doing this type of training because you're probably really balanced already. But that's a few different ideas. And again, this is just an advanced balance exercise where we're kind of teaching our body to be a little bit more stable side to side. Can be really good for that horizontal scrambling, and also pretty beneficial for the vertical scrambling as well, just to kind of help the body feel a bit more confident. Now, next one is when this one's specifically really looking at this vertical scrambling, when we're kind of going up and up and up, we kind of get everything involved. It's called the bear crawl, which, you know, I'm sure a lot of people have sort of seen before in one way or another. So essentially what this involves is you're kind of up in a quadruped position. So on your toes and your hands, and basically we're just stepping forward, stepping forward, stepping forward. Nice and slow and steady, and you kind of crawl forward, you crawl back. Now, the idea behind this exercise is it really just develops endurance and confidence through when you need to use that sort of full body movements, when you need to get the arms and the legs working together, when you're kind of in these awkward positions where you're a lot of stress in certain positions. It can be really, really useful just getting everything working together and just get you feeling a bit stronger and a bit more confident with it all. Now, with this exercise, you can basically just start with body weight. For most people, that's going to be hard enough as it is. Like for myself, I hate this exercise personally. I do body weight and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired already. You can start with that and see how you go. If you do want to make this a little bit more difficult, again, you can wear a pack on your back and that will add extra weight into your shoulders, which will make things a challenge. And again, you can use that dry bag 3/4 full of water and add a bit of instability. It's a very, very simple exercise, but again, it can make a little bit of a difference here, particularly the vertical scrambling. It's not exactly the same in the sense you're not actually pulling yourself up or anything like that, but it does do the job. So that's exercise number 3. And the final one I want to cover is the overhead step up. So basically, a lot of hikers know step ups, tried and true, pretty simple exercise. The overhead step up is basically you're doing a step up, but you're holding a weight straight above your head. Essentially, the idea behind this is it's basically going to be specifically for rock scrambling, is developing stability and control through the torso when we're actually climbing up steep steps. So sometimes we kind of find when we're climbing, when we've got this steep rock scrambling, is we're pushing up, and then all of a sudden we're just like falling out of whack. We can't really control where we are, and we really do struggle. So essentially the idea behind here is holding a weight straight above your head. Not only will that get the upper body working a little bit, but it's going to challenge your stability, challenge your coordination a little bit, which can be pretty beneficial. So to start with, what you want to do is basically start off with a low step, a light dumbbell. You can even use like a can of soup or something like that. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of weight. And you're literally just doing this. Just up and down, up and down, up and down. Do one leg, then the other. Now, the next progression for this, if you do feel like this is a bit easy, then you can basically hold a pack and hold it in 2 hands. So holding 2 hands straight above your head, you'll notice with the pack, it's a little bit more awkward. It'll kind of, you'll be falling over. Next one is again, doing the dry bag situation where you got that sloshing water. You can also use a higher step and make that a little bit more challenging. And if you do really want to make this a challenge, you can basically start using a high knee as well. So it's essentially, you're going to push up in the exercise, and opposed to this leg just sort of stepping there, you can do a little high knees like that 80s aerobic stuff where you go up, high knee, and then come down, but still got a weight above your head. That is a little bit of a challenge in this and that. But again, you will notice it is a little bit different to exactly the movements you're doing when you're scrambling, but there is a relatively decent amount of crossover when we're kind of challenging ourselves in this situation. So there are 4 exercises you can kind of slide into your workouts, your normal strength workouts, which can make a little bit of a difference. Now, next up, I want to cover the on-trail training, and specifically stuff you can do outdoors or actually out on your hiking adventures, which can make a little bit of difference here. Now, essentially, this is pretty straightforward. It's pretty common sense, but it is very, very effective. If you do struggle with rock scrambling, the most simple thing you can do to get better at this is to practice it. And essentially getting more exposure to this type of thing in a way, in an environment that's relatively controlled. So it's not in the middle of nowhere. It's not in the middle of your hike when you're tired and you're thinking of other things, when you're in a rush or whatever it may be. In a controlled environment, it is one of the most significant things you can do. And in all honesty, before you even do any of those exercises I showed you before, this is going to give you the best benefits. Now, what tends to happen is many hikers, when they do struggle with something, we're talking about rock scrambling specifically today, but a lot of hikers in many different situations, they'll find something they struggle with. They'll be like, I don't enjoy that. I really don't, that causes me stress. I'm really, really tired, whatever it may be. And then they'll tend to avoid it as much as they can. So they'll specifically choose hikes where they're like, hey, no rock scrambling. Or someone will say, hey, I'm going on a trip, but we've got a day of this. And you're like, oh no, that's not for me, or whatever it may be. And they'll tend to avoid it as much as they can. And then what happens is when they actually are faced it, maybe they haven't read the track notes on a trail quite well, or maybe they just have an adventure they really, really, really want to do, but it just has to have this section. They're like, hey, I've got to deal with it, or whatever it may be. It ends up compounding the issue because they did it once or did it a couple of times. They realize they hated it. Then months or even years go by when they haven't really been exposed to this thing, and they go do it again. They're like, this sucks. And it's just this never-ending thing because they're just not getting exposed to it. So essentially just getting more exposure during our training can make a big difference. Now, there's a few different things you can kind of do about here. I've got a little 3-step progression, which is a nice way to work through things. First step, Simple place to start is just seek out something locally which may be similar to what you struggle with. Now, locally, I mean something that's relatively easy to get to. You can drive to, you can walk to, something that's in the local area. May not be 100% accessible for everyone, but do what you can. Now, this may involve like, a headland at a beach. If you're lucky enough to live near the coast, you can go around the headland. There's like rocks around the headland at low tide. That works pretty well. Or it could be a dry riverbed if okay, there's a hike somewhere, or there's a trail somewhere, or there's a park somewhere with a dry riverbed. That works pretty well. Or if you're looking for the more vertical stuff, maybe a park or the hill, or just a really close local trail, which does have a bit of climbing, and you're like, hey, it may not be a huge amount, but it's got a little bit of that. And then essentially you want to find something, ideally if you can, which is similar to the demands you want to improve on. So if you're aware, hey, I struggle with the horizontal stuff, finding something that's similar to that. Or if I struggle with the vertical stuff, finding something similar to that, or whatever it may be. You want to find something that's pretty easily accessible, because again, this is just training. This is just practicing. You want something that's not going to be like an hour away or 2 hours away, or whatever it may be. And you also don't want something that's just in the middle of nowhere. We want something that's easily accessible, so you can kind of go to this, practice it, leave. It's not something you have to travel, like hike hours and hours into something. And finally, also something not too intimidating, in the sense that sometimes people go from 0 to 100, and they'll go, I hate this type of thing, I'm going to practice it, and they choose something that's super, super, super strenuous and challenging. Choose something that isn't too intimidating. Yes, it's a little bit of a challenge. Yes, it's going to push you out of your comfort zone, but it's not the hardest thing in the world. And then essentially once a week or whatever it may be, go out and practice. This literally could just be 10 minutes. You could drive to the beach, do 10 minutes of walking around the headland, go walk on the beach, go have a coffee, enjoy the rest of your day. Or it could be a case of, okay, I'm doing a load of pack walk around a park, and I'm aware there's a dry riverbed. So I do my normal walk. Then, for 10 minutes, I'm going to take my pack off, just walk up and down the riverbed, something like that. It could be as simple as 10 minutes, could be more, whatever it may be. But just getting this little exposure to it can make all the difference. Now, main thing you want to think about here is just doing, again, getting into it, just exposing yourself. And as you're going through this, just trying to keep your breathing steady. Because one thing that can happen is when we are in these situations, we're going through, we're really struggling, we're pushing ourselves, we get tired, we get stressed, we get anxious, and our breathing gets more and more and more and more, and that compounds the issue. So when we're practicing, we want to teach the body to stay calm, to stay steady, to stay happy. So as we practice it, it'll feel a little bit more natural on the trail. So a really simple way of doing this is just concentrating on breathing in and out through the nose. Keep yourself to a pace where you can breathe in and out through the nose when you're practicing this stuff. Naturally, that's going to slow down your breathing. Naturally, that's going to calm you down. And naturally, that's going to limit your pace. Meaning, if you start getting huffed and puffed, that means you're going a bit too quick. Pull it back down, go slow, breathing in and out through the nose. Really, really simple, but makes all the difference. So that's your first step. Now, next step is once you've done that a little bit and you suss that out, you want to begin to seeking out some trails which have some of these demands. So in your actual weekend hiking, just seek out some trails that have these demands. Initially, we want to start with, again, not go from 0 to 100, but find hikes that have just some small sections of this. Not the entire hike, or not hours and hours at a time. You're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing in the world. But maybe I have half an hour or 60 minutes in total on the whole hike of this type of stuff. You have the option of either just seeking out these trails and just exposing yourself to these a little bit more, or you can go on a trail and you'd be like, all right, I've got a 4-hour hike. I'm aware that 20 minutes of this is a bit of rock scrambling. Then you can go out and you can do the rock scrambling and be like, you know what, I'm actually going to repeat this once or twice or something, and just do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Or maybe if you're halfway through a hike and you're like, hey, there is a dry riverbed somewhere, then I'm just going to go up and down the riverbed for 15 minutes and then continue on with the hike, something like that. But again, if you have the time and inclination, you can kind of repeat this as you move forward. Then essentially the third step, if you're kind of on this journey and you're like, hey, I want to improve my rock scrambling. Hey, I know this is a struggle. Hey, I'm going to apply my training. We kind of want to have a bit of an end goal in sight. We want to sort of set ourselves a bit of a target so we can practice and then test this out on an actual hike. So one thing I'd really, really recommend is if you do struggle with this and you're actively trying to improve it, setting yourself a goal of a challenging hike which has rock scrambling. This could be a hike that you've done previously and you're like, oh my gosh, I really struggled with scrambling on this hike. It may just be something locally where you just have a bit of access to, may even be a big trip and a big holiday and you're like, you know what, actually I'm going to plan this out and book it in the calendar. Whatever it is, find something where you can challenge yourself, put it in the calendar for 4 weeks time, 6 weeks time, 8 weeks time, 12 weeks time, whatever timeline you want to give yourself, but set it in the calendar, pencil it in. Then essentially what this can do is just give you some focus and drive with your training to get up to scratch. Because sometimes if we're just a little bit airy-fairy with this, we're like, oh, we'll practice this here and there, this and that, we never really end up getting anywhere. But if we set ourselves a timeline, we're like, hey, within 10 weeks, I need to be ready for this, that can put the pressure on and really, really get us where we need to be. And then basically set yourself with a calendar, train yourself up, follow these things, follow your general training, build yourself up. And then basically when you do this, set yourself a goal when you have done this big task. After that hike, you want to sit down and do some self-reflection at the end. Sit down and really, really sort of put pen to paper and think about how it went. If you trained up for this hike, you did the rock scrambling and you were like, hey, that was actually pretty good. That felt a little bit better, or whatever it may be. You want to get pen to paper and write down why it was good. You want to write down exactly what you did prior, and you also want to write down how it felt on the trail when you're actually doing it and how you felt accomplishing it. Because this is so important. Number one, writing down what you did, really valuable for further in the future if you do run into this issue again. How you felt during, can sometimes just acknowledge, hey, I was feeling strong, I was feeling balanced, I was feeling good. That's such a powerful thing. And how it felt afterwards accomplishing it. You set yourself a goal, you set yourself a target, you built yourself up. You need to acknowledge that and writing down how you actually felt. It's such a powerful thing. So if it went good, do that. Alternatively, if it went bad and you're like, oh, you know what, I did all this training and it sucked. It still was really, really bad. Write down, again, while it's fresh in your mind, exactly what you struggled with. Write down, hey, I was doing this and I was going side to side and I just could not feel confident in my feet. Or I really struggled with my breathing. It just got on top of me. Or I couldn't keep up with people. I was like feeling steady, but then I had to go quicker than I was than I wanted, and I didn't feel very good. What it may be. Write down exactly what you struggled with and what you need to work on specifically. And then if you've done this and you've reflected on this, you can either make the decision saying, okay, number one, I know what I need to change in my training to help improve this. I know maybe I'll add some extra exercises, or maybe I'll improve this or this and that, and I can do this for myself. Or alternatively, if you're like, I don't know how to do that, then that's a case of saying, okay, I'm going to reach out to a professional, say, hey, this is the stuff I struggled with. How can I improve this? And come up with a plan. So then you'll sort of know what the next steps are. Self-reflection, so important. And then finally, this video's gone a little while, so I want to kind of just wrap this up. A few extra tips. Focus on breathing. So when you are doing this practice, both in the exercises I'm talking about, and also the training on the trail, and also when you're actually out doing rock scrambling on the trail, focus on your breathing. As I said before, try to focus on that breathing in and out through your nose throughout. This will naturally calm you down, naturally manage anxiety, naturally sort of help you be a little bit more steady. Really, really powerful. If you do feel like you're going to get out of breath, just slow down or even stop, bring your breathing back down, and then restart. And if you can do this, it's going to be really, really beneficial for managing mentally and also making sure you're not just churning through your energy by going too quick and getting too stressed out. Number two is when you're actually approaching these sections on the trail, if you know they're coming up, enter the sections fueled. One of the most simple things you can do to make these a little bit more enjoyable is making sure you have replenished a bit of fuel before you go there, so the body's got plenty of energy to work through. So simple thing is basically before you enter these sections, have a little snack of high carbohydrate, low fiber, low fat, low protein snack before you hit these sections. Why high carbohydrate? Because carbs are going to be used to fuel your energy in this situation. Low fiber, low fat, low protein, meaning they're going to get digested really, really quickly, not going to sit in your stomach. So this could be something like a piece of fruit, dried fruit. Could be some sports drink or some electrolytes with carbohydrates in it. Might be some jelly beans or some snakes or something like that. Anything like that, high carbohydrate, low fat, low protein, low fiber, just before you do this section, if you're aware it's coming up. Have a positive mantra. One thing that can really, really get tough in these sections is we don't enjoy something, we start building up to it, going through it, and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm getting tired, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with this. We start getting negative in our head, and we start talking down to ourselves. We start saying all this rough stuff to ourselves, and it ends up just compounding, because what we actually say in our head will make things worse and worse and worse and worse and worse if it's negative. So essentially having a positive mantra in your back pocket, which is a simple positive statement, which you can just repeat to yourself again and again and again and again. This can make such a significant difference. At the very, very, very worst, it will stop you getting negative and cut that out. At the very, very best, this positive thing can give us this boost in energy, give us this boost in confidence, and make us feel really, really good. So for example, my positive mantra that I use these days, I've used a few that evolved over time, but basically when I fall into tough sections on my training, when I fall into tough sections in, whatever it may be, I repeat to myself, I'm strong, I'm powerful, I'm unstoppable. It's pretty corny, but for me, that gets me going. Whatever you are, think about words, simple positive statement, which means something to you, which you can just repeat when you need. And I thought there was another one there, but that's all good. So wrapping up, last little bits and pieces. Rock scrambling, can be pretty rough for a lot of hikers, but with the right training and preparation, you can turn this around, make it much easier. As I said before, make sure the very first thing you want to be doing is nailing the big rocks of strength, conditioning, balance. Make sure you're following a structured program, making sure you're progressing that and being consistent and diligent. If you're not doing that, that's where you want to start. After that, then you can start incorporating some specific exercises into your strength workouts and your warm-ups or your rest periods, some of those examples I showed you before. And you can incorporate some of that specific exposure outdoors into your cardio sessions or into your hiking. So it doesn't have to be all these extra days you've added into your training, but you can just slot it into your normal training there. And then finally, be patient. This stuff will not change in 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It takes consistent application of these principles week after week after week. You need to be patient with it because this type of stuff does take a while, but stay consistent, be patient, and if you can stay diligent with it, you can turn it around. Now, last thing I want to cover today, obviously we've gone through a bit of detail here, fully understand if, okay, you might be thinking, all right, that all kind of makes sense, but how do I actually apply this into my life? Maybe you're not doing that training already. Maybe you just need someone to lay it out for you, whatever it may be. If you do need some extra help with this, beyond what we talked about today, I would love to chat with you. Basically what we offer through Summit Strength is personalized online personal training for hikers to help them get fit, strong, resilient for their adventures. Essentially, our packages typically include a custom and personalized workout program, which will get you ready for anything the trail may throw at you, covering strength, cardio, mobility, hiking, all the bits and pieces we covered today, all personalized around you and your life and your situation. We also put a big emphasis into education, and help you talk through all the peripheral factors that can make or break an adventure, things like nutrition, recovery, self-care, mental strength, a bunch of other things. And we also give you the coaching, support, and accountability to keep you on track and make sure someone's in your corner to answer any questions you have and keep you moving forward. Now, if you did want to learn a little bit more about that, you can basically go to summitstrength.com.au/online. There's a big video there which kind of dives into the topic a little bit more, into the program, what we offer, how it all looks. And if you want to find out a little bit more about it and see if and how it may be right for you, there's a link on that page where you can book a call with our team. We can have a chat, talk through your situation, your needs, and ultimately just see if one of our options may be right for you. So if you want to learn a little bit more, check it out at summitstrength.com.au/online. But with all that being said, I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar. I hope you got a bit of info out of it, and I really do hope it helps a lot of hikers moving forward. So any questions of that, please let me know. But aside from that, have a lovely day, and we'll talk to you very, very soon.